to the Storm in a Teacup podcast. I'm here with the rest of the Storm in a Teacuppers. Guys, what's happening?
I'm a little under the weather. I'm not going to lie. I've got a little bit of a cough, and it sounds like I know you just got over something, Caleb, right? Am I right?
Man, I'm still getting over it right now. It's put me on my back. It's been pretty rough.
Nobody likes this Mr. Sniffles, that's for sure.
It's like 3 weeks now for you or something, right?
Yeah, this has been a very unique illness.
Have you gone to talk to your local pharmacist about that, Caleb?
Tried to.
They couldn't help him. Taylor, either you're sick or you're eating. I can't tell which one is it.
I'm doing nothing. There's nothing over here. It's not me. It's not me.
He's eating grapes.
I ate before the podcast, and you can ask Caleb about that.
He did. I listened to it.
You ate just during the entire pre-show.
Just because you ate before doesn't mean you can't eat during?
That's a very valid point. That is very valid.
I think
that is something I would do.
I think we've established that, this is a drinking show. Something to drink to, something to drink during. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it, guys.
Well, can I say this about the drinking? After releasing our first episode, I think that there's a good drinking game that can come from it because we say the word quote or quotes like 40 times in that episode. So if the listeners at home wanted a drinking game, they could somehow center around taking a drink every time we said quote maybe. I think it would get you really sloshed.
They would already have drank 9 times already. So.
And I quote.
Maybe we should just limit that game to Natty Lights or something along that line.
That's kind of the same sentiment behind the quality of our show. So yeah, maybe a Schlitz or a
whatever's free. Free.
Old Milwaukee. That's the classiest of the classy.
I believe they call those below premium beers. So if that says anything about our show,
that's the industry term.
That is the industry term, actually. They've worked a little bit in that.
Beers that have been setting the curve for years.
I'm going to start using that. That's great. Hey, Taylor.
Yep.
How's the weather in Chicago?
Yeah, the weekly update. We had about 6 inches of snow yesterday.
Wow.
But it is warmer now. It's not negative 40 anymore, so that's a positive, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, how's the weather in Knoxville?
Well, strictly speaking, I guess mathematically, that is a positive if it's no longer a negative, wouldn't you say?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be as a
bastard.
positive because when it's negative 40, it's too cold to snow, so the streets are clear. But when it warms up, it's warmer, but then you're slipping and sliding everywhere, and there's car accidents. So, would you rather be cold or in a car accident? Those are the two options. You pick.
Man, that's rough. Well, I guess let's get into it. Let's talk shop. I know that most people by now are pretty familiar with the tragic accident that happened at the OC Throwdown with Kevin Ogar, and I think we wanted to spend just with the podcast that revolves around CrossFit and weightlifting and fitness in general. I think we would be remiss if we did not spend a little bit of time on this. First and foremost, I think we need to give our heartfelt condolences to Kevin and his friends and family. It's a tragic mishap that occurred. And I would also just preface that, whatever we say here today is under the guise of those heartfelt condolences, and that we're going to try to take into account that hindsight is 2020, and we're not going to try to say what should have happened or what should not have happened during that. But I know that it was something that occurred that I think is if used correctly, could affect some real change, some real positive change in CrossFit and CrossFit competitions. So, Forrest, what's just kind of your gut feeling on what happened at the OC Throwdown? Or did I give enough background? Sibo, is there anything else that needs to be said about that?
From an OC Throwdown standpoint, I feel like it's fair to say that they've kind of established themselves as more or less the kind of premier
one of,
if not the premier competition for high level CrossFit competitive exercisers. So
The other one being Oktoberfest at CrossFit K-Town.
yeah, oh right, naturally,
obviously.
Yeah, but they get a lot of media exposure. They have some really big cash prizes. They've got, probably the best sponsors besides, the actual CrossFit games. But aside from that, I guess we need to kind of give just a quick nutshell version of what happened to him. Without speculating too much, it was, I believe, the 6th workout of the OC Throwdown, and it was establish a 3-rep max touch and go snatch. And so on his opening number, which I believe is at 225 pounds, he dropped the bar he missed it behind him. And evidently this was a weight he was very comfortable with. He missed it behind him and he caught it. And as he was standing up, he missed it behind him and it hit him in the spine. And then there's some plates stacked up behind him and it hit the plates and then it bounced back on his spine and he dropped to the floor. And so it severed one of his vertebrae and he is now paralyzed from the hips down. And so that's kind of, real in brevity what happened. Obviously there's a lot of things around what I just said that we can talk about, but yeah, did I miss anything, guys?
There is a video of it, but it's not at a great angle to see what exactly happened. So I think any sort of argument about what precisely caused the injury would be speculative at best, because a bunch of stuff. I mean, like you said, the bar was kind of bouncing around. He was standing up. He missed it behind. I mean, a lot of stuff happened to lead to the injury. So I don't know if we can actually pinpoint one single thing. I think it'd be speculative at best. Is my point. So the point is it happened, and I think that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, there's a lot of great articles that have kind of taken, one standpoint or another about, things leading up to the mishap, what happened, kind of a breakdown of what happened. A few people have talked about. They think that, some health professionals that think that, he may have had, pre-existing conditions that kind of led to this, and it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But without getting into too much of that, because again, it's all speculation. We don't really know the whole story. He hasn't really come out and talk about it much, to the best of my knowledge. But yeah, I guess what we want to talk about today is just kind of the incident and everything and anything surrounding what happened. So, Forrest, what do you think?
You guys pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it that we can say with any sort of confidence. I think it was just a freak accident. It could have possibly been that accident that any sort of competition is always waiting on. Anytime you run a competition, you always, I mean, Grant could probably speak for this, but you always have to worry about your athletes. Like, man, is somebody going to get hurt? What am I programming? What is the potential for this programming to cause somebody to get injured? And it's always got to be in the back of your mind as someone who runs an event like that. So I think it was just a matter of time until something like this happened, whether it be at garage games, OC Throwdown, whatever. And, it happened, and it's very sad. And you can't really say much more than, your heart goes out for him. Apparently he's a really nice guy. And nobody's had a bad word to say about him. Everybody's just been so nice. The community in general has been so nice to him. And
well, let's expand on that, Forrest. On it was bound to happen. I think you're absolutely correct. What do you have?
Before we go negative, because I know once you go negative, it's kind of hard to go back to the positive. I think if I do just want to kind of shine a light on the silver lining around this, and that's kind of been like the community rallying around this guy, because and I don't want to talk about this, too entirely much, but he didn't have health insurance. And so that's a topic in and all itself that we can talk about. But the silver lining here is that the community has rallied together to put together a lot of funds. Yeah, a lot of funds for this guy who surely is, raking in thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses. And something that I thought that CrossFit, probably the most respectable move that I've seen them ever make, is that they made a very large contribution, and they didn't just go to social media and be like, hey guys, guess what? We just gave Kevin Ogar $150,000 or however much the sum of the money was, but they made a large contribution and they didn't take advantage of the opportunity. You know, they just did it behind closed doors like a respectable company. I thought that was really awesome. And I'm sure that other companies have done the same thing. And I feel like that's kind of that. I feel like that's the best way to go about it, because I know some other companies were trying to raise money and giving only a proceeds of it towards his cause. And obviously that's janky as all get out. But yeah. All right. So that's kind of the silver lining. I just wanted to briefly touch on that. So yeah, Grant, back to you.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to donate to Kevin Ogar and the fund, they're up to, I think, a little over $330,000 now, and they're trying to hit a $500,000 goal. And just go to kevinogar.com, Kevin and then OGAR.com, and you can donate there. I guess what I was gonna say about kind of the inevitability of it is it's just a numbers game at this point. I mean, it's a sport where you're asking people to push themselves to their limits, just like any other sport or most other sports. I think the chess boxing, Taylor, you think that's a sport that people really get pushed to their limits?
No, I don't. Nor do I think it's a sport. So we'll leave it at that.
Whoa!
Yeah,
How are we defining sport here,
yeah,
Mr.?
This has been really contentious between Taylor and I for the better part of our known time together. Chess boxing, I think it is the ultimate sport.
Is it at the Arnold?
Pole dancing, fitness, sport. Chess boxing, not a sport. We've had this discussion 100 times.
Okay, well, we'll save that one. We'll save that one for the podcast on chess boxing then.
Or the podcast whenever we interview all the pole dancing champions at the Arnold in a few weeks.
Pole dancing is misleading. It's pole fitness. Right?
Pole
Yes, it's
fitness.
pole
I'm
fitness.
sorry. Apologies. Pole
Respect,
dancers and
Caleb.
pole fitnessers.
Yeah. Apologies to all three of your wives out there. It's pole fitness, not pole dancing. So what I was going to say was the inevitability of asking people to lay it on the line for whatever the prize is, whether it's pride, money, sponsorship, whatever it may be. Something like this is going to happen, and the way the sport has grown and as many competitions there are now, as many athletes as there are now, something tragic is going to happen. And I just think it was a numbers game. It's very tragic. It's very sad. But for people to say that this was bound to happen because there's something inherently wrong with CrossFit, I would definitely disagree with them there. Now, we could speculate and make arguments about the programming at the OC Throwdown. Why in the world is there a 3-rep max touch and go Olympic lift? Not just any Olympic lift, but the snatch. Maybe we can speculate as to whether or not that it was a good call for an event period or an event that late into the competition. But I do think, and I would like to get your feedback from the three of you. I mean, this is bound to happen, right? It's going to happen when the sport of American football started. I'm sure the first, however many years, there probably wasn't a serious accident. And then I'm sure someone got paralyzed from the neck down, tragically.
Actually, early on in American football, deaths were actually very common, and football almost died out in the early 1900s. Until
I believe it was called Death Ball at the time, was it not?
It was called the XFL.
It was called Death Race. Jason Statham starred. But until Teddy Roosevelt himself actually intervened and created some very specific, laid down some very specific safety regulations and demanded that this happen to end all the deaths. Football was kind of on its way out, which is a weird history lesson, and it's weird that I know that, but it kind of highlights the point that I want to make about this, which is, as like you said, the sport's growing and it's getting bigger and bigger, and at some point in time there needs to be someone, and I personally believe that HQ needs to take the lead on this, not admitting liability or anything like that, but setting forth some sort of best practices regarding putting on a competition, programming, having paramedics present, safety, basic safety issues like that. Maybe even to the point, and at some point, I don't think it's not necessary now, but maybe in the future, maybe there's some sort of basic medical screening of the athletes prior to their competing, just like there is in football. At the beginning of every year, you got to have a physical. A doctor's got to sign off on you that you have nothing lurking that's going to just all of a sudden, come to the fore. Now, that being said, I don't think CrossFit's at the level of football yet. But I do think that in the sense that the NFL and the NCAA, Major League Baseball, the NBA, they kind of take the lead in regards to the biggest issues in their sports. I think that this highlights a broad kind of series of issues relating to CrossFit competitions. And I think HQ needs to step up and say, look, this wasn't our fault. We didn't do it, but here's some things that everyone should be, coaches, you're programming a competition. These are the best practices you need to be following. Athletes, you're going to a local competition. These are the things you need to be looking for in that competition. You need to be doing your due diligence and making sure that all of these things are present. And if they're not, then maybe you shouldn't go to that competition. So those are the sort of things that I think we can be taken from this incident and should be taken from this incident.
Taylor, are you saying that all football players in the NCAA and NFL that step on the field are 100% healthy?
Absolutely not.
So
Would
you're
you?
saying,
Absolutely
I think
not. But I am saying that the steps that are taken I don't think are completely adequate to prevent injuries to those athletes.
But
I
they're
do
real and they exist.
But they're
Right,
real and
right.
they exist.
There's
and there's
checks
something there.
Yeah, there are checking points.
If there's a pre-existing spinal issue in an NFL or an NCAA player, a doctor at some point is going to find that prior to that just popping up on the field. Say if Kevin Ogar, again, this is speculative, if he had a significant spinal issue that he either was diagnosed and he was ignoring it, or he thought it was he felt a pain but he was ignoring it, or it was undiagnosed, there should have been something in place to highlight that, because he shouldn't have been in a position to make that decision to go out there and endanger himself in that manner. And I think there are steps that could be taken to have prevented that. And this, again, all of that is completely speculative as regarding Kevin Ogar.
Sure. I feel like you're getting into a little bit of like
checks and
John
balances.
Locke. Yeah. Do we own the right to put ourselves in harm's way or to take our own life? You're getting a little philosophical there. I like it, but
well, I'm glad he clarified it, because I thought what Taylor was trying to say is that all NCAA athletes should be on Obamacare and should be paid to play their sport. So I'm glad you clarified that for me, Taylor.
Everyone
Forrest,
should be on
that's another
Obamacare.
podcast, and you know that. That's another podcast for us.
Forrest
and we'll have that
is
discussion.
trying to bait you right now into discussing what's the university that the students or the athletes
Northwestern.
unionize? Northwestern.
I heard they've actually hired Taylor Wayman as their lawyer. He's been seen on the Northwestern campus.
I
working.
want it to be known that in no way, shape, or form do I represent Northwestern University or any of its athletes. Disclaimer.
Hey, here is one question I would like to know, and this one's, I guess, focused at Grant. Grant, when you're doing Oktoberfest, do you have to contact HQ? Is there any paperwork that you have to jump through? You have to do as far as jumping through hoops or anything with HQ to do a competition?
Short answer, no. And do you want to expand on that? Because I want to run with that if you're not going to expand on it.
No, it's up to you, because I didn't know if the OC Throwdown, if those event programmers had to do any sort of certification or like send their programming to HQ, anything like that. Garage Games, any of
HQ
those
is
bigger
totally
ones.
hands off. I mean, and CrossFit HQ even made it a point to kind of whenever the media said that Kevin Ogar had severed his spine in a CrossFit competition. They went after CNN, they went after all these different news outlets and said, hey, it's not a CrossFit competition, it's not a CrossFit sanctioned event, you can't call it that. So they're trying to show that they're very I guess hands off on that, and that's true. They have nothing to do with these local competitions. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and we talked about this on our last podcast that we released when we were discussing Mark Ripetoe's article, "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of CrossFit." Taking this free market approach of the best practices and the best gyms and we'll just say the best practices will rise to the top. I think that is the case, and I think some very good practices will rise to the top from this tragic accident that happened at the OC Throwdown. The problem is it took this tragic accident to now, here's what I see happening, to now maybe some actual like fitness leagues or some type of oversight committee to where, let's say, the CJ Martins and the Doug Chapmans and the higher up coaches, OPT, will say to their athletes, no, you're not going to do that competition because the health and wellness fitness competition committee hasn't signed off on it, saying that there is going to be smart programming and that there's going to be paramedics on site and that all these other things are going to be in place. And I think that's great. I think that would be a welcome, not necessarily change, but a welcome addition or addendum to local competitions like that. And that's what are your guys' feelings on that?
Yeah, I think that would be a really great idea, almost like if someone like OPT or even like a think tank of coaches like that you were able to submit your workouts for a weekend or whatever kind of event it would be like, and they could review it and maybe give some feedback, and then eventually you could go through some kind of process where it's been reviewed and approved by whatever this board is or whatever this committee is. And that way you're kind of raising the bar for the caliber of programming, and at least it will help those who are signing up kind of understand, all right, this is going to be at least a peer-reviewed competition. That sounds kind of weird to say that, but I feel like all these things we've been talking about, it's raised a lot of awareness. And something Taylor and I have talked about is that I think there needs to be an open conversation about there are more ways to test fitness than just putting someone through 7 or 8 30 or 45 minute long grinders, and it almost becomes a test of survival at that point. Who can survive the best at these competitions, rather than being a well-rounded test of fitness, where no doubt work capacity is one of those things that needs to be tested more than once, no doubt. But there are other, ways to test fitness, which I thought the CrossFit Games did a pretty good job of doing this past year with, the zigzag sprint and, some of the skill tests and stuff like that. So what are you guys' thoughts about that?
Well, I agree with you. I think, I think if things continue to go the way they are, I think you will see more leagues and coaches coming together on their own to create their own, quote unquote certified competitions or whatever that there is some oversight. And that kind of goes back to my earlier point about, CrossFit Big C, which is a distinction that CrossFit HQ has made a really big point of making, that they were not, CrossFit Big C is not related to this competition that Kevin Ogar was injured in. They can either take the lead in this and say, hey, these are the best practices, maybe even create a certification. Like I was talking to Caleb about this earlier, create a certification. There's a CrossFit competitors course. Maybe there's a CrossFit competition programming course where it's just a couple of days, got some top coaches come in and you discuss how to program for these types of competitions. But I think you're either going to see CrossFit, so far CrossFit has just, Big C has been more concerned with avoiding liability and disclaiming all connection to this, rather than taking the lead, moving forward and saying, hey, we're not responsible for this, but here are the best practices that everyone should be engaged in. And if they don't do that, then I think, like Caleb was saying, these coaches, these higher level coaches, are going to take it upon themselves at some point. Now, I don't know when or how, but people are going to start taking control themselves, and then CrossFit HQ may lose their standing as the top echelon or the leader in what is happening in this sport and in this community, because people are going to say, hey, I don't want to get hurt. I want to protect myself. I've already heard it from people in my gym who say, I'm coaching them. They're like, well, I don't want to go too heavy. I'll break my back, like that Kevin Ogar guy. And I'm like, no, that's a separate, that's obviously a separate issue. But people in the community are aware, and they think about that stuff on a daily basis. Am I going to go to this competition? I don't know.
What's the programming like? They always ask that question. Let's look
Right.
at the workouts. So
Right, exactly. And people are concerned out there, and I think that needs to be addressed in a systematic and effective manner, one way or the other. And I think it will.
I think that it will definitely, and here's why. It's not for safety reasons. It's not that it's going to improve the product. I think there's money to be made there. I think it's easy to incentivize that, because if you can create some type of, maybe not even a governing body, but something that you can put that stamp or seal of approval on and say, hey, this competition has been okayed by us. That competition can then charge more money. That competition is probably going to have to pay some type of a fee just to get that stamp of approval, just to get that think tank or that group to even look at them and consider them. So I think that there's money to be made, and I think that's kind of the greatest incentive of all for that in particular instance.
Well, think about this. Just think about how much money the Garage Games has made off of quote unquote certifying certain competitions and having their own sort of certified judges. Now that how in depth that certification process is up for debate, but just the fact that it's there, I think that's kind of the direction that a lot of this stuff is going to go.
It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's the direction a lot of this stuff is going to go.
I think their certification process is that you have to come up with the ideas in a garage.
Yeah. Do you have a garage? You're in.
Yep.
Well, I think, do you have a garage? Do you have a pulse? All right, you're good. Let's go. Let's rock this.
Let's go for some clean and let's clean and throw in the mud, but that's only out of the garage.
Do you own do you have a condo? You're out. You're not in. You don't have a garage.
Start the condo games, you bastard.
So let's segue a little bit, since we've already done it, into just programming in a competition. And Caleb and Taylor, I know you two were in the pre-show discussing this a little bit. So I'll start with Caleb. Obviously, I think all four of us and many, many, many other people in the CrossFit community realize now that to test for fitness, you don't need to do 9+ workouts in a weekend. There are more effective and safer means and ways to test for the fittest male, fittest female. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Caleb?
Yeah, I think a lot of the competitions you see that have been made fun of or poked fun at, I feel like there's this pressure for programmers of competitions to be new and innovative and creative, and in that name they've done those things, but at the sacrifice of others' well-being. And that's kind of where internet famous trollers such as Drywall or Epic Beast Mode, or even like Hey Naked, like some of those guys have made names for themselves of just kind of like poking fun at these things. But I mean, they raise valid points. They don't really make those points they don't state them very well, maybe. But the point is that, like, it doesn't need to be as creative. Well, creativity is good. You should never frown upon creativity, but first is safety, and then you need to think about the whole of fitness. What does fitness involve? And you can go back to CrossFit's definition and those 10 different skills or whatever you want to call them. And there's a lot of different ways to test those things. And I'll go back to the zigzag sprint, which I loved last year. Like, talk about agility, like how it's so rare that you see in a CrossFit competition, like basic athleticism manifest itself in a workout. And I feel like some of those things are lost. Like, where are the hurdles? Where is basic climbing? Where is being able to learn how to scale a brick wall? Like, where are those things? Why are they not more prevalent? And I know a lot of it comes from a logistical standpoint. It's hard to run events like that, but I hope to see the future of CrossFit competitions or competitive exercising competitions move in that direction, where it's less about work capacity, or not less about work capacity, but equal parts work capacity, and then other parts like skill, athleticism, agility, those kind of things that I feel have taken a back seat in up until now.
I think in regards to those things that you're talking about, Caleb, I think those used to be such a big part of the CrossFit Games. Like, if you think about '09 on that row railroad tie drive that Hackenbrook dominated, or the sandbag wheelbarrow piece from 2010, or in 2010 too, they did the wall climbs and the jump over and all of that stuff. And I think that's super important. I think I agree with you that should be a main part of.
Yeah, and that's just one
going forward. Yeah, no, I think that's that's just like 2 games, and I think they did it. And then was it 2011 or 2012 where they went to they did the obstacle course at Pendleton. That was great. I thought that was great too. I think that should stay I think they should maintain that as a very core piece of the game specifically, and I think it should be part of like regionals as well. That being said, as far as the programming and stuff, I agree creativity is important, but I think, people have to just remember the basic principles of a CrossFit workout, not just the 10 physical skills, but, is it measurable? Is it repeatable? Is it something that you can standardize? One of the biggest things that I see at a lot of competitions that I think is poor, because I think it's very difficult to create a standard technique or something like that, is bear crawls. Like, I think that's a terrible. By itself, if you want to put it in a workout in your gym, I think that's great. But for a competition, I think it is very difficult to keep everyone using the same technique and the same and measure that and repeat it so that everyone's on the same page with that. Box jumps, I can jump to this height, I can open my hips, everyone has to do it the exact same way. I can measure it, I can repeat it. I don't think you can do that with certain movements like bear crawls.
Taylor, you just hate bear crawls because you're a big guy and you don't want to get on all fours.
I did bear crawls
for so long,
playing football. Yep, exactly. I've done them way too long. But that being said, would you guys agree with that statement? Or because a lot of people, they just kind of they can kind of run and barely touch their hands to the ground. Some people use more arms. I think it's just too loosey goosey on a movement like that, and I think that's why you don't see that at the CrossFit Games.
Are you saying that they were used in a workout you've seen recently?
I think it was either the OC Throwdown or one of the Wadapalooza. It was one of those out. It was one of the ones out west. They did it, and it was like a 40-minute AMRAP with like 300-meter bear crawls, 400-meter run, and 50 double unders or something like that. Which
isn't the 11th tenet of fitness? Isn't it bear crawls?
Thou shalt do thy
it's like agility, coordination, strength.
I think that was
bear crawls.
Hey,
bear crawls.
We can save the bear crawls, and we can talk to Epic Beast Mode and see how he feels about bear crawls when we get him on here. But he is our foremost expert on all things bear.
Oh
so.
yeah, it's very true. All right, well let's push on. Okay, so a topic that I know we discussed kind of midweek, just in I think a random text message group that we were in, is or when did it come out? So Rich Froning Jr. just did a 225-pound Isabel, which Isabel is typically 135 pounds, 60 kilos, and it's 30 snatches for time, or we'll say 30 ground to overhead in one movement for time. He ends up coming out, publishes a video, or CrossFit, I guess with a capital C, publishes a video of him doing Isabel with 225 pounds, and he does it in, 6 minutes and change? What was his time on that, guys?
627 or something like that.
627.
Well, I'm really confused. Like, if Isabel is at 135 pounds, then why did he use 225 pounds?
What an idiot!
I don't get it. I don't
think
know.
Did he read the numbers wrong?
I think he just had he had a few plates left over, and he was just like, I'll use them all. Why not? I think that's how it.
He doesn't want any plate to go to waste. He's
Right.
like,
What a humanitarian.
I think Khalipa was probably trying to read the workout and dictate it to Rich, and Khalipa was the one that couldn't read it.
Yeah, Khalipa loaded his plates. Rich was like, hey, I'm going to do Isabel. And Khalipa said, well, I'm just going to put 245s on both sides.
Well, I think
By
what
the way,
happened
Taylor,
was-
that's Khalipa's inner monologue for you, Taylor.
I think Khalipa, like, Rich was like, write me a workout for the day. And Khalipa obviously did not use words. He just drew a picture. And in that picture, there were 245s on each side. And Rich was like, all right, Jason, like, I'll just do it the way you drew it. Like, I think that's the way it's supposed to be. And then that's how it played out. So.
what do you think Rich calls him? Do you think he calls him Jason, or do you think they have like pet names for each other?
No.
Like JJ or Kali, or I don't even know what you would go with on that. I want to know what the pet name is for Rich, though.
I think Rich is the
Jersey Shore.
I think he's the hunter, and I think Khalipa is Curious George. That's what I think.
Man, you went way back for that one.
You just alienated half of our listener base.
Sorry for those 7 people who didn't get that.
Well, I think, to be fair, I think going on to the age of the average CrossFitter, I think most of them probably didn't read Curious George growing up. So I think I think only the older people got that one anyway. So I think we're okay.
Okay.
That's fair. Well, let's talk Isabel. So Isabel, I mean, 225-pound snatch 30 times, and he does a full snatch for each one, yeah?
Yep.
And, I mean, let's be honest. You got to give it to Rich. This is why he's the champion. He's just so daggum efficient on every single rep. It's
he didn't
beautiful
miss
to
a
watch.
single one.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, 225, his max is what, 300? So you're looking at 30, 60 off, making it 240. So, I mean, he's at like 75% of his max for 30 reps. Yeah, that's nice.
tough. That's tough. It's obviously doable, but it's tough.
Yeah, it's five a minute, I guess. So, I mean, you're looking at every 12 seconds doing a rep at 75% of your max. So that's, and I'm not a math guy, but
I think we've established that, Grant.
So let me ask you this, Taylor. Who else can do that? And let's start out just in the 2013 CrossFit Games field for the men. Hell, I'll even let you throw in the women too. Who can do a 225 Isabel?
Well,
Thanks, Grant.
They started in the women. Well, obviously Camille can do it.
I thought Forrest would take that argument.
I would say I think Ben Smith. I think Ben Smith could do it not easily, but I think he would be fairly proficient at it.
Yeah.
I think bearded guy from Canada whose name eludes me right
Lucas
now.
Parker.
Lucas Parker. I think.
Khalip and Maddox could both do it. They would power snatch it.
Hey, isn't
ugly.
Khalipa's snatch like 255? I mean, I think it's like 255 or 265.
Yeah, but that's
good.
because his snatch is a muscle snatch. So
Yeah.
he'll just he'll muscle snatch 225.
He'll be fine
Listen,
with that.
I think
Dang it.
I think-
almost all the guys could do it. Honestly, like put a time cap of 15 minutes on it. I think almost all of them finish it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Josh
Austin,
Bridges doesn't finish it.
Do you think Austin Maliola finishes that?
No.
I don't know what his snatch is, but it can't be much above 250. I mean, let's just go off a time frame. We'll say 10 minutes. How many of the field's doing that in 10 minutes?
Oh, well, that's a whole different. I think you go from 10 to 15 minutes. I think you're talking about two completely different things because you give it a 15 or 20-minute time cap. I think I agree with Grant. I think 85 or 90% of that field finishes it. I think if you go 10 minutes, I think that drops to like 50 or 50%.
I was gonna say 30-40%.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically talking about maybe 10 competitors at that point. I think.
I think Asia Barto could obviously do it in under 10. I think.
Neil Maddox?
Chad,
question mark.
Neil probably could. Chad McKay could.
McGoldrick?
I think Mike McGoldrick does it.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does it under 10 though.
No,
It's not,
he does it in 15. I don't know about 10. That's true. Well, let's do this. Expand the field to the 330 million Americans, the current population of the U.S. How many Americans can finish it? And let's change the time cap to 60 minutes. Put
60?
a percentage. Yeah, put a percentage to it. How many Americans finish that?
2%.
Percentage of population.
That's so hard. That's so hard to.
Did I hear someone
say in 60 minutes?
Did I hear someone say 2%?
Yes.
I did not say that. That was
Holy
Taylor,
Lord!
so
Explain yourself.
Well, there's a lot of. Hey, you have to think though. There are a lot of strong men out there. Now, I still think 2% is. I still think 2% is a little high.
Taylor,
but there are a lot of strong guys out there who can't do 30 chest to bar pull-ups.
Listen,
but they will snatch 225 30
Hey,
times.
I'm an attorney. I can put my numbers out there.
You're going
it's
from
not what you
a
know,
lot?
it's what you can prove.
So prove it, because you said Forrest says a
prove
lot,
it's
which
not.
I don't even know what that means. What does a lot mean, Forrest? Like, put a percentage to it. Come on.
No, I'm not going to say a lot. I'm just saying, like, okay, let's think about it. Now, if we're going to give an hour, Caleb Gregory's probably doing that. Caleb, are you doing that in an hour? I mean, that's a snatch every 2 minutes.
Probably not. I mean, no. I mean,
You don't think so?
That's
'Cause I honestly
such
think
a.
you
I mean, I
might.
snatched like the most I've ever snatched is 240, and I've hit it twice. But there's no way
Okay,
I'm snatching 225 30
I mean,
times. In
yeah,
an
but I
hour.
mean,
no way.
I'm going to throw – you start getting a lot of random people. I'm going to throw Lex in there.
But you're not throwing random people. You're throwing the best people in one of the best gyms in – well, arguably, I don't know. I don't know this, but one of the best gyms in Knoxville.
But I mean, is Brandon Bergen?
Well, wait. Instead of saying what is the percentage, I want you to say outside of the people we talked about in the CrossFit Games, how many more males in America do you think could do that? Like, what is the number?
Okay, thank you. Now I feel like I can do that, and I would say.
Oh, you can give numbers of individuals.
No,
but you
because
can't give a
I don't know the
percentage.
percentage. No, because I don't know a percentage. I mean, I'm just gonna say maybe 500.
It's a very small number.
To 750.
Let's just leave it at that.
Okay. 500 to 700. Taylor's 2% is 6.6 million people.
I'm not arguing 2%.
I know.
I'm
I'm coming at Taylor
you apologize.
right now.
You apologize. You say, Forrest, I'm sorry. Taylor, you're an idiot.
Forrest,
You owe me
I'm
an
not
apology.
sorry, because typically you are the idiot that I'm arguing, but this time it's Taylor's 2%. 6.6 million people are completing a 225 Isabel.
So because I'm the usual idiot, I get lumped
I don't
into
think we
Taylor's
have
argument?
numbers.
That's not fair.
I don't think we have the numbers on the illegal immigrants who are who are snatching.
And second off,
That is their-
So I think that
my
6.6
original
million
argument-
isn't out of the range of possibilities. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you know what?
my original argument was the world, and now you start including Japanese people who don't even know they can do it. Genetically, they just can do it. You just put 225 on a bar, and they walk up to it, and they just start snatching.
Okay,
it for
Forrest, the
reps.
world. Go
I'm
with
just
the world.
saying,
What is the world? What is
How
the
many-
percentage of the world? And just so you know, percentage is a ratio, so it's not an absolute number, but it is a. I know you're struggling with that earlier.
man, in the world,
It's anchored at 0 and 100.
I still say 2%.
and we're not talking CrossFitters. We're not talking people register for the CrossFit Games. We're just talking about how many people in the world,
In the world.
living, breathing with a heartbeat.
In the world.
I will honestly say, I'm going to say 1%.
So you think you could walk anywhere in the world, and out of every 100 people, you could choose one person, and they'd be able to do 30 snatches at 225 pounds within 60 minutes.
Well, when I go to Asia, it's going to be like 1 out of every 5 can do it. So I'm going to make up
What
a lot
is
of ground
your-
right there.
what is
Caleb.
your-
I'm just telling you, there's a lot of Asian.
What is your fixation on Asia? I don't understand this.
Because they can just do things. There's an assembly line of they just put Olympic
Forrest.
lifters together.
Forrest, let me back up and let's just ask this question. What is your perception of what goes on in a regular business day in quote unquote Asia?
They wake up in the morning, do heavy snatch pulls, go in, work like 3 or 4 hours, then do heavy back squats, and then when they get off and go home, they do heavy snatch and clean and jerk.
Did you just say heavy?
Heavy.
Forrest, you racist piece of shit.
I feel like in Forrest's mind, like the Yakuza like snatch between executing their enemies. Like Japanese businessmen go up to the roof and do overhead squats between board meetings. Otherwise, they dishonor their company. Like, I think this is just ridiculous.
Hey,
Well, Forrest, I'm going to come to your defense here.
Are you saying something? Are you saying something else goes on, Taylor?
I'm going to come to your defense here, Forrest.
I'm saying you're not. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's improbable.
Let me hear Caleb's
You
defense
better
for Forrest.
you better
right
have
here.
my back because you said 2% of Americans are doing it. So, damn.
Forrest, it's actually a lesser-known fact that as a rite of passage in their teens, all of Asia, quote unquote, if
Which
you're
is
a
one
male,
country, by the way.
you actually do have to snatch 225 pounds for 30 minutes within 60 minutes.
Booyah.
Else you have to commit seppuku, and
Told
your
y'all.
life is over. So actually,
Not even-
it is a verifiable fact
That's-
that
that's-
Think about how
what
many
the-
sons and daughters are dishonoring their parents because they can't get their 30 reps in.
Isn't that what the movie The Last
Oh,
Samurai
man.
Told
was
y'all.
loosely based upon? Is that right?
I think so. Like Tom Cruise brought the Alico set over to Japan.
Yeah. That's how the Shogun fell. Was the snatches. So
So, Forrest, let me ask you this. What do you think? Let's just try and think this out without, like, hard figures and hard math. Like,
hey, oh wait,
what do you
hold on a
think?
second. Hold on. Let's take this and let's go. I think we can talk more about the Open next week, and I think we can really delve into the calculus behind this because I think there's some deep derivatives that need to be addressed, and I need to get my math numbers correct because I don't have my paper in front of me and I have a book. So let's save it for next week, and let's just say it's impressive, and the Rich is obviously the champ for a reason. Can we end on that?
I like that because what that tells me is that Jess is giving Taylor a very mean stare right now, saying, Taylor, we need to leave.
Very true.
So we need to wrap this up.
And it also means I'm the winner. So up yours, Tay.
All of those things are true. All of those.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to wrap up, and this is how I want to wrap up. Taylor,
Yep.
I'm sorry, no. Forrest, 1% of 7
God.
billion is 70
Okay.
million people in the world doing Isabel at 225.
Gah. Piss off. I don't know why I'm getting the shaft on this so bad. Taylor says 2%.
He said 2% of Americans, and you know that with just the American do hard work kind of spirit, that's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah. Good luck, Grant. I can't wait to watch you do it.
So next week we're going to tackle the Open. We're also going to tackle should everyone do the CrossFit Open. If you go to a CrossFit gym, should you feel obligated to sign up for the CrossFit Open? I'm excited to hear some opinions on that. And we are going to speculate here on the Storm in a Teacup on what the workouts might be. Maybe even throw a little strategy at you guys. Not that we know anything at all about doing well in the Open.
Sling some strategy. I feel you.
Always slinging strategy. So I look forward to next week. This was fun. I guess that's good
Adios.
night, America.
That's it.
Bye-bye.
Good night.